Another week. We're back. It's Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's. Andy, you've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare you, Andy. I know you're getting ready to try them at some point soon. I'm going to get you there. I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Andy, how we doing, man?
Doing well. We're going on the road. First time this season. I'm ready for it. Just like all the Buckeyes players are tired of non-conference play. I think we are too. We want to see a Big Ten football game. We want to get on the road. Only 4 road games in the regular season this year. There were 6 last year. I'm excited to actually have a road trip. But it's cool to go to the other stadiums in the Big Ten.
I completely agree. I think I said that in the Friday column that I've got coming out, the score pick, staff picks, and then I put some extra thoughts at the bottom just to kind of get them out. This brain, everything's rattling around in here. I'm happy to be out of the horseshoe just for a week so we can, see another Big Ten stadium. But also I'm really happy, and I think this is where we should start. I'm really happy to see these road white uniforms, man. There's something about the Ohio State road whites that just they do something to me, man. They're so cool to see. They come running out of the tunnel, and then you get them on natural grass 3 different times this year. I love the white uniforms, man. They get me.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd take it this direction. Not a huge uniform guy, but yeah, the whites I think are better than the primary home color.
Yeah.
I mean, like the scarlet's beautiful in its own way, but I think the white just pops like you're talking about, especially for a night game. I think that's going to be pretty cool there with the primetime kick in East Lansing. So yeah, I'm excited for it. And by the way, I mean, Michigan State, we were talking about it before the show. They're pretty ravaged by injury right now, but you got to tip your cap to Jonathan Smith and what he's done in the first 4 games. I mean, they're 3-1. They could have been 4-0 if they pulled that game out against Boston College on the road. They've already gone on the road twice. They had a comeback win against Maryland. Yeah, they could just as easily be 1-3 right now, but it's been impressive to see them stack 3 wins at the start of the season with really quite a rebuild there in East Lansing.
Yeah, I expect a challenge from Michigan State, at least a first half challenge, or at least a good fight. I don't know. The odds makers say that it's 23.5, could be 24 at this point, at whatever book that you look at. But I think I kind of agree with that, and you'll see that in the score pick on Friday on lettermenrow.com. But also, I don't expect it to get there quickly. I expect Michigan State to come out with some haymakers for the Buckeyes. Like, Jonathan Smith's a good coach. He's going to figure out a way to do something against this Ohio State team. So I'm looking for a challenge here for Michigan State, and I think at least for the first half, we're going to get something interesting.
He's a great offensive mind. Remember Tristan Gebbia was a quarterback on the roster last season, and he, of course, played for Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. And he always talked about how it was such an advantage having not only the knowledge of Ryan Day in that year, kind of in that quasi-graduate assistant role playing quarterback for Ohio State last year, but also having the knowledge of Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. So he has a great reputation in college football for what he does with offenses, and I'm sure he watched the tape from Marshall against Ohio State and seeing how Stone Earl in that offense was able to kind of exploit a few cracks with the Ohio State defense, especially with spreading things out with the air raid, using the mobile quarterback in Stone Earl and kind of manipulating the defense in that way. So I'm sure Jonathan Smith has been looking at that, trying to use Aiden Childs and his legs, which have been very, dangerous this season so far through 4 games. And I'm sure that they'll try to exploit that again this week against Ohio State.
Yeah, it's interesting because on one hand, I guess on one side of the coin, I thought that Marshall just ran something different and unique to spread Ohio State out. I don't think Michigan State will get there, but I do wonder if Michigan State will try a little bit of that, not air raid, but air raid principles, dipping their toes in those waters, if you will, just to see if they can spread Ohio State out and get a matchup that they like. There aren't many matchups in this Ohio State defense that anyone's going to like, but Marshall found a way to find, I would say, some crevices, not quite holes. I would say crevices, crebi. I don't know. But in this Ohio State defense to move the ball a little bit in the first half there until Ohio State tightened up. So I am intrigued to see, a good mind like Jonathan Smith come into this, have a little chess match with Jim Knowles. I think that could be a little fun early. But again, I think Jim Knowles, the king of adjustments, as he's not so commonly referred to as. But I think that he will adjust well. But I do wonder if Jonathan Smith's going to have something up his sleeve for him.
Yeah, really curious to see, first of all, who gets the ball first, and secondly, if Ohio State's defense is able to get off the field pretty quickly, because they were not able to do that against Marshall. Marshall went down the field, scores that touchdown, takes a lead in that game. And, it's something for the Ohio State defense. They start faster. Like, yeah, you're going to make some adjustments in game inevitably, because as we've talked about, teams come out with scripted plays. They come out with maybe a curveball or two, something you haven't seen on tape yet, to try to get that advantage. But still, for this Ohio State defense, the standard's the standard, right? And they want to be able to adjust quicker than they have been maybe in those first couple of drives, or even just the first drive, or in the first half in general, because they've clearly adjusted at halftime. I think the next step is coming out right away and forcing consecutive 3-and-outs.
Yeah, we got a good comment here. It's dangerous business running your quarterback against Ohio State. I want to get to that because I looked up a stat today when I was doing a little bit of writing, and Aiden Childs has 12 first downs or touchdowns this year on the ground. He's a capable, willing, able runner. And I think that's interesting because Ohio State has given up, I think it's 6 first downs on the ground between 2 games. Western Michigan didn't have any from its quarterback because their quarterback's kind of statuesque. But between the 2 quarterbacks with Akron and the 2 quarterbacks with Marshall, yes, they were able to move the ball a little bit on the ground and pick up first downs to the tune of 6 of them. And Aiden Childs already has 12 of them. But Aiden Childs has 12 of them against non-Ohio State defenders. And the thing about running the quarterback against Ohio State, I agree, Ed, both times the running quarterback has gotten involved in this offense, in an offense against Ohio State, they have left the game on not their own terms. And so for Michigan State, and this isn't a Michigan State preview show, but like, you want to get it to a bowl game in year 1 under Jonathan Smith, I think you should probably want Aiden Childs to play the entire season. And so, like, how much do you want to run him if, you're down 14-0? How much are you going to want to run him if you're down 17-3? Like, is there a point in this game where it's like, we've seen Ohio State injure a couple quarterbacks already because how physical it is. Like, that's something that I'm looking for. It's something I'm interested in because 2 quarterbacks have left on unpleasant terms against this Ohio State team already because they were running quarterbacks. Those are just the little storylines we get to talk about and why we do this video in addition to everything else we do, just to kind of go into the little details we're thinking about that, we don't really get to talk about very much the rest of the week.
Are we counting Ben Finley as a running quarterback?
I mean, he was a little mobile.
Okay.
He tried.
I think, yeah, I mean, they definitely beat Stone Earl up a little bit as he carried the ball quite a bit. And I don't remember if that injury was non-contact or not, but maybe it factored in with all the hits he took. Who knows? Yeah. He did leave pretty early in the second half there. It's a valid point. You're definitely risking something. Ryan Day always talks about that with running the quarterback. You get the pro of it, right, is that you equate the numbers in the run game, gives you advantages, especially in short yardage and in the red zone. The con of it is that, yeah, you're opening yourself up to the risk of injuring your quarterback. That's why Ohio State has really just championed the fact that they've got depth at the quarterback position, and that's why they're more willing to run someone like Will Howard. Now, we haven't really seen that yet too much. We've seen him run at the goal line a little bit. We've seen him run in short yardage a little bit. We've seen the tush push, the willpower, whatever you want to call it. But we have not seen really the full capacity of the run game. He talked about that this week. But again, as you said, there's risk with it. I do think, though, you look at Aiden Childs, he's 6'3", 217 pounds. He's probably the most athletic quarterback Ohio State has faced so far. So I do think he's a little bit different kind of breed. And I think they're not going to hold anything back. They're going to try to give us a shot. I don't think, we were talking about early in the season, something some MAC opponents or like a Sun Belt opponent. There comes a certain point where you're like, yep, let's fold it. Not going to win this game. Let's get out of here healthy. That's not going to be Michigan State. There's way too much pride. It's the Big Ten. This Michigan State program has pulled off upsets. Everyone watching knows that. 1974, 1998, 2015. Go down the line.
Stop that.
There's several. So I'm not saying this year is going to be another. I'm just saying that they're not going to hold any of the cards back. Like, they're going to throw the punches that they have.
Yeah, what are you doing, man? Bringing that into this show, this program? That's you're gonna have to hit your head against that brick wall behind us there. That's some bad juju, man. Hey, let the record show on Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's, that I did not bring up those years. Our friend Andy did. All right, Andy, let's get into the keys. We do this every week. Well, we try to every week. We're going to do it especially during Big Ten play. Now that the cupcakes are behind us. My big key, I'm going to start us off because it's going to be on lettermenrow.com it is on lettermenrow.com from Thursday, is you have to handle your business on the road. People say the run game and defense travels on the road. Well, Ohio State's really good in the run game and they're really good on defense. Does it travel or does it not? I just want to know, like, bring your run game, bring your defense on the road and you should be fine. That's a key to victory for me.
Yeah, I'm going with stopping the run. Because if you look at this Michigan State offense, like maybe they'll try to slow the game down a little bit, maybe try to limit the number of possessions Ohio State gets because it's such an explosive offense. And we already talked about the running ability of Aiden Childs, but they've also got a pretty good running back duo, Nate Carter, as well as Kyron Lynch-Adams. And if you're Ohio State, you gave up 71 rushing yards in the first half to Marshall. You didn't have Tyleik Williams. Will he play? Seems like that's still up in the air. He practiced this week. It seems like that's going to be something they monitor towards game time. Even if he doesn't play, do you have guys like Tywan Malone, Hero Kanu, Caden McDonald, Jason Moore stepping up in his absence? I look at that right guard spot for Michigan State. They've had 2 guys go down already this season. That's kind of a vulnerability spot. But can Ohio State exploit that in the interior of their defensive line? Whoever's playing there, whether it's Tyleik Williams, Caden McDonald, Ty Hamilton, whatever, are you able to kind of exploit that weakness for Michigan State inside, or is Michigan State going to have some success running the football? I think that's their best shot.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know how to say this the best way. I want to see more Caden Curry on the field against the run because I think his motor's high enough where he can make things happen against the run. And does that mean that he has to play 3 tech? I don't know. But if Tyleik Williams doesn't play, I think there's ways to get other guys involved that don't just mean running out one of the second or third string defensive tackles in the rotation. Like I do. I think there's different ways that you can mitigate the run game with a high motor guy who very clearly has the juice to play a lot at Ohio State. And obviously, like, it was big mistake last week, lower in the head, going one of the more blatant targeting calls I've seen in a while. But just a boneheaded mistake, but also, like, that's an aggressive play. I guess you're never going to want a guy to do that, but also, like, if you're going to make a mistake, make an aggressive mistake. It's certainly an aggressive mistake. I just think that there's ways to stop the run that isn't just run another tackle out there. And so I want to see if that's something that Ohio State explores. I doubt it because Larry Johnson, to his credit and also to a fault, is pretty stubborn with the way that he does things. So we'll see. My next key, Andy, and I'm glad you brought up the run game. My next key is on the other side of the ball, run dang ball. So Michigan State gave up 17 yards. I'm trying to remember because I wrote it down and I threw the sticky note away because I'm an idiot. Gave up 17 yards to Prairie View A&M. They gave up 67 or 68 yards to Maryland. And then they gave up 132 yards on the ground to FAU and 152 in another game. I'm missing one. Boston College. There you go, your alma mater. So, like, they've been pretty good against the run against teams that I don't think have a lot of interest in running the ball. Maryland has no interest in running the ball. They just throw it to Ty Felton every time. Boston College wants to run the ball, but didn't Robichaux get hurt last week?
They had a bunch of issues. Also, that game was in pouring rain.
Yeah. So, the other 2 games don't really count because they're against FAU when Michigan State struggled in the opener, and then against Prairie View, and I just kind of throw that game out because it was against an FCS opponent. So I don't know what this Michigan State run defense is. Right now on paper, it looks good. Ohio State should challenge it and challenge it a lot, early, often, at all times. Challenge Michigan State's ability to stop the run because I just don't know if they have that. They lost Derek Harmon to the transfer portal. He's now playing for Oregon. We'll see him in a couple weeks, and we'll talk about him then because he's a really, really good player, like first-team All-Big Ten player, transferred to Oregon from Michigan State. I want to know if they can stop the run, and I think Ohio State should dare them to stop the run.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how dynamic the run game has been the last couple of weeks, going over 270 rushing yards back-to-back weeks is pretty incredible, considering they never even got close to that mark last season. So it feels like that run game is building and building and building. The question is, as you just mentioned, like, how does that transition to Big Ten play? Are Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson still going to, be averaging north of 8 yards per carry? I don't know how sustainable that is, but being well over 5 is definitely the goal for both of those guys, I think, throughout this season. So I think that's a good key for this one. I think for me, we talked about this throughout the week, but this Ohio State defense needs to get back to forcing some turnovers. You have 3 that you force in week 1. You get 2 defensive touchdowns. Everyone's like, okay, this defense has it this year after only forcing 11 turnovers last year. Well, then no takeaways in back-to-back games. Now you go into East Lansing. I think there needs to be an emphasis to get a couple interceptions, to force a few fumbles. You got a young quarterback over there in Aiden Childs who's thrown 7 interceptions so far this season. He's got a lot of talent, but it's a lot of ups and downs. I think you described it earlier this week as a roller coaster. I think that's pretty accurate. There's a lot of turnover-worthy plays, a lot of just interceptions, period. So I think that's something that Ohio State needs to capitalize on, again, whether it's interceptions or even just strip sacks. Anything you can do to take the ball away from Michigan State is a win for this defense. I think, at times it feels like they're just playing a bit conservative. And I understand that maybe that's just Jim Knowles' defense here at Ohio State. I mean, Ryan Day talked about that this week. The priority is to get off the field on 3rd down and stop the run. I do think there's got to be room for that balance, though, to create more havoc. And I think we need to see it this week against Michigan State.
Yeah, Aiden Childs was sacked 3 times on 21 dropbacks against Maryland. So, that's a good stat to know when it comes to turnovers. He was sacked once on 10 dropbacks. No, what's DPR mean on pressures? I'm looking at PFF stats right now, but he was sacked once against Michigan or against Boston College. He was sacked 3 times against Maryland. I think that is right for the picking. Ohio State strip sacks, they practice them a lot, Andy. They just don't really happen. Pressure didn't get to the quarter. They didn't get to the quarterback last week, but guess what? Marshall was throwing the ball at like Mach 3 once the quarterbacks caught the ball. So you didn't really have a chance to pressure him often. And when you did have a chance to pressure them, you were, I think, a little timid to get too far upfield because you were worried about your rush lanes because the quarterback was mobile. So I understand the lack of sacks last week, but this team needs to be better in that regard. Jack and JT have to be better. I think, Kenyatta and Caden Curry. I think Caden's playing pretty well. Kenyatta looked decent at times. The defensive tackles, they sorely missed Tyleik Williams. It doesn't have to be an interception is the thing that I guess I'm saying. But if you're going to want interceptions, the guy you should want to play is Aiden Childs because, again, I'm not disparaging him. I think he's a good player. I also just think he's super young and inexperienced, and he throws into traffic a lot. And he throws the ball to the other team. He's got eight picks and 4 touchdowns. It is what it is, man. And so tips and overthrows, you got to get those, and he has a lot of those. And I think Ohio State's got a chance to do some damage in the turnover department. I like where your head's at there.
Yeah, curious to see how much they try to heat him up. With a young quarterback like that, you never really know. His under pressure stats are not very good this year. He's 11 of 31 while under pressure, according to PFF. That's where 6 of those interceptions have come from. So again, for Jim Knowles, it's not just, are you getting pressure of 4? Are you going to send some blitzes there, like maybe Jordan Hancock off from the nickel spot, or maybe you're bringing in a corner blitz for Denzel Berg. I don't know. Maybe you get creative with it, especially if Michigan State tries to pass out of maybe some run formations that are more run heavy. I don't know. You can get creative if you're Jim Knowles. I just don't know if we've seen as much of it as I thought we would see. And I don't know if that's just because you're playing 3 non-conference games against teams where you don't want to show as much. But I'm curious to see, as much as we talk about Chip Kelly and kind of how he unfurls that play sheet, and we see a little bit more and more. I'm curious to see if we start to see a little bit more and more from the scheme side of things from Jim Knowles as we get into Big Ten play.
All right, I got the stat correct, and it actually is pretty telling on how Aiden Childs kind of operates. So we had 3 picks against Maryland. He was pressured 21 times. The defense generated 21 pressures. That's of any kind on the defense. He was sacked 3 times. That's 14.3% of the time he was pressured, he was sacked. Against Boston College, 10 times he was pressured, 1 sack. That's 10%. So like that's double-digit percent. Those are not great numbers. And so I think there's chances, especially if it's any sort of slick, and it says there could be a shower during the day. If it is slick because of the remnants of the hurricane coming in, you just don't know what the weather's going to be. But also, I just think that there are chances and opportunities for this team to create, and even if it's not a turnover, havoc. One of the things that I think bothered people on Saturday against Marshall, it's not the lack of sacks and it's not the lack of turnovers. It didn't seem like it was chaotic at all. And like Jim Knowles kind of thrives on that, creating defensive chaos, if nothing else. And I didn't really think that Marshall was put under any like havoc or chaos on Saturday. And I think that's something Ohio State's got to get back to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just felt like there was a lot of running room on the interior, like where that defensive line is usually super stout. We talk a lot about Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, not only absorbing blocks, but also making tackles, sometimes not even their assigned gap. And I think that's really what stood out about those two over the last year plus, and something that Mike Hall would do at times, although he was more known for his pass rushing ability. But I think that's what separated these defensive tackles the last year and change. And now having Tyleik Williams, I think that kind of emphasized his impact a little bit. I think everyone realized how much they miss his ability because, you can have a defensive tackle take up those blocks and allow the linebackers to come in and make the tackles, but you're going to have a lot more defending the run if your D tackles along with your defensive ends and your linebackers are supporting against, the run. And I think that was absent a little bit against Marshall. And I think that's why they were able to get some third and manageables, which again, with a mobile quarterback made things easier. If you're putting Aiden Childs in a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 8, he's going to have a lot harder time to manage that. But if you put him in a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, he can just use his legs to get the first down there. So I think for Ohio State, that first and second down defense can be really key. And I think that starts with defending the run, and it probably starts inside. Just can't allow that many yards before contact. Like you said, there wasn't enough havoc. There wasn't enough messiness. There needs to be more of like a cloud of dust right near the line of scrimmage, and I think there was against Marshall.
Yeah, my last thing is to keep Will Howard clean. He's only been sacked one time this year. I think Devin Brown has taken the other 3 sacks that Ohio State has allowed this year. I believe Will Howard's only been sacked once this season. It was from Josh Fryer. Kind of whiffed a little bit of a spin move, a tricky move by the Marshall defensive end. Credit where credit's due. Also, not a great rep for Josh Fryer, and I think Josh, as a 5th-year senior, would be honest and tell you that. He owns up to his mistakes, if nothing else, and I do appreciate that. He's a pretty candid guy. So they need to keep Will Howard clean. The thing on defense, because I don't think they're turning the ball over often. Like, they've got 1 turnover this year, right? So the only thing that a defense can do that riles up a home crowd that's not a turnover is a big, 3rd down sack or a big, 2nd and 9 sack that gets you into a 3rd and long. If you can avoid those, I think Ohio State will be able to manage anything that this crowd has for it, even in primetime, that this defense has for it. So, maybe my bigger point is to stay ahead of the chains, but the underlying point is to keep Will Howard clean and let him throw the ball because he's been pretty damn good when he throws the ball this year.
Yeah, Michigan State leads the Big Ten right now, 15 sacks. They're averaging 3.75 per game. Again, you mentioned the schedule, but it's stronger than a lot of team schedules. It's stronger than Ohio State's schedule. They played Boston College on the road. They played Maryland on the road. Those are not easy games. Those are power conference games. And the fact that they got 15 sacks through 4 games, no other team in the Big Ten has more than 12. Again, some teams only played 3 games. So, but still leading the pack with 3.75 per game. I think that's a good point. Ohio State's going to be tested more than they have been previously. You go down the line too, it's pretty spread out for Michigan State of who's having sacks this season. They've got a couple guys with 3 sacks, one with 2. Anthony Jones on the defensive line, Chris Bogle. You go across the line there's some bodies that can make some damage. So yeah, it's going to be a test, more of a test than we've seen so far. I think we've been really spending time looking at the Ohio State offensive line in terms of how they connect in run blocking. We haven't spent as much time evaluating their pass blocking because, again, they've done a pretty good job. That's generally how these things go when you're doing really good job of it. We're not mentioning their names. This is going to be a week where I think we have to key in on the pass blocking a bit too.
All right, let's get some questions. Will Travion have more carries this week than Quinshawn? Doug, it's a good question. I don't know if it matters, but I'm not dismissing the question. That's not me dismissing your question. It's more of like, well, if Travion has 6 carries for 75 yards and Quinshon has 6 carries for 173 yards, but they both scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, I think we just saw that, right? So,
Yeah.
we just saw that. So it doesn't really matter, but maybe it's a heavier Trey game because it's Big Ten action and Trey's been here, done that. He knows what he's doing. I don't know, but if it's a grind it down kind of win on the road at night, then I think that favors Quinshon. So I don't know. Can my answer be James Peoples with getting out of there in the second half and just handing the ball off to James Peoples?
I think they genuinely use him in the same way. Like I know a lot of people want to assign the differences and say, well, Quinshon will be better in these situations. Maybe it's like between the tackles and Travion will be better in the outside zone. Like I don't think Ohio State sees it that way. I really think Carlos Loughlin sees those two guys as very similar, and I think he likes it that way. I think the carry count depends in part by the game flow, like who's in there on drives that are longer, who they want to sub in and sub out at that time. Like if Travion Henderson busts open, a 40-yard touchdown again and maybe breaks away for a 50-yard touchdown, like he's going to have fewer carries because the drives he was in on, he ended very quickly because he took a carry to the house. So I think part of it's circumstantial. I think a big part of it's circumstantial. Like how long are the drives they're on? Like it goes back with the right guard rotation, player rotation. Like Austin Sarabeld played fewer snaps than Tegra Shabola. Yeah, Tegra Shabola started the game, but also Austin Sarabeld was in for both of the one-play touchdown drives. Yeah. So like the rotations can be hinged upon how long a drive is, not necessarily who's playing better or what the situation is.
All right, let's get to another one. How do we feel about the right side of the offensive line right now? I don't know if you can feel anything other than great. As far as run blocking goes, like Josh Fryer is getting out in space. He looks more athletic. He looks like he's on his tracks, as they like to say in the coaching world, like, staying exactly where you're supposed to be, but also being on your man. Like, I think he's doing a great job run blocking. And then you've got 2 quality candidates for the starting right guard spot, wherever they decide. I think this should be the last game where they truly rotate. I think you've got to start to establish somebody there against Iowa, and especially on the road at Oregon when you're probably going to have a silent count and it's going to be, hard to even get plays through with how loud it might be. But like, I think right now you have to feel great about it. And then pass blocking, obviously there could be some work done, I think, with Josh Fryer, but I don't think he's been bad. Like, I don't think the 3-game sample size has been terrible. He had a bad block against Marshall, as I just talked about earlier. Overall, I don't think he's been terrible. So I think you should feel pretty good about where the right side is, and you definitely should feel great about where the left side is.
I think the right side, starting with Josh Pryor, like you said, I think he's better than he was last year because he's more athletic. He worked on getting better bend and being able to swing outside and climb up the field for those second-level blocks. I asked Josh Simmons yesterday about it. He said it's like watching a different player on film. That stuck out to him. And, of course, Josh Simmons is known for his athleticism. That was his big thing as he transferred in from San Diego State. So that means a lot coming from him, I think. Yeah, as far as the pass protection goes, that's still not a great rep to have on his tape. But again, as he said, you move on from that. I think that was tough for him last year too, because I think he had 5 sacks assigned to him or whatever PFF charted it at. And it really just magnified those bad reps, whereas he was overall pretty decent throughout. I think the bad ones just showed up as big blemishes. So again, I think that's where last game maybe that haunts him a little bit. But overall, I think he's been better. And then, yeah, your right side. Well, now you have part of the left side, right? With Austin Sarabeld, who was playing left guard for 2 games, who's over on the right side, rotating in with Tegra Shabola. I think both of them looked really good. I spent a lot of time watching them back this week against Marshall and against, I think that run game effort is really impressive right now. And I think the fact that it has to be totally in sync. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And especially with how much movement there is with this offense, pulling guys, getting them to climb. If there was one that was sticking out like a sore thumb, first of all, they wouldn't be playing. Austin Sarabeld wouldn't be playing right now if that was the case. Tegra Shabola wouldn't be playing right now if that was the case. Second of all, they all need to be in sync, and they have been so far. So I think you got to feel pretty good about the right side of the offensive line. Then again, Ryan Day said he feels good about nothing right now. So depends who you ask, right? So that's where we're at.
It's in the eye of the beholder. We see it and think, man, they look pretty good compared to last year. Ryan Day says, no, shut up.
Yeah.
Nobody looks good. We have to play Big Ten teams now. You know what does look good, Andy? The Wendy's saucy nugs. You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Shane, have you had them covered in sauce? Honest fan, you had them covered in sauce? I don't think you have. Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker like Andy Backstrom over there, you can try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. Honest fan, I dare you to try the spicy nugs. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's, a participating U.S. Wendy's, which brings us, Andy, to our saucy nugget of the week, presented by Wendy's. Lettermen Live is presented by Wendy's. Let's get into the saucy nug of the week. My saucy nug of the week, just a fun fact that our Matt Parker kind of dug up a little bit that I really like, is that Ryan Day, I don't know if it's, I guess you could say the same thing about Michigan, but Michigan State cycled through so many coaches recently. Ryan Day is 6-0 against Michigan State. And in his time with Ohio State, he's collected wins over 3 different head coaches. So Saturday, he'll look to go 7-0 against his 4th Michigan State head coach.
That's pretty crazy.
Because they had, so let's go through this. They had Mark D'Antonio, they had Mel Tucker, then they had Harlan Barnett, and now it's Jonathan Smith.
Yeah, the interim one will always throw you for a loop there with those stats. But yeah, it's a good one. I mean, Ryan Day still has not lost to an unranked team. So
technically, and I mean very, very technically, Ryan Day is only 5-0 against Michigan State, though, because he did not coach at Michigan State in 2020. Larry Johnson was the acting head coach for that game because poor Ryan Day had COVID-19 and had to stay home. But Ryan Day still, I believe, gets credited with that win. I do not believe that goes in the record book as a Larry Johnson win.
There you have it.
It's just a great little fact there, dug up by Matt Parker. That's great work from our crack recruiting reporter and also dear friend. Great work, Matt. He's over there with the series fun facts every week on the viewing guide. If you don't know how to watch Ohio State, you got to go to the viewing guide. But even if you know how to watch the Buckeyes, click on that viewing guide because he puts little fun facts about the series down below. Always just bangers for little fun nuggets that you can break out, saucy nuggets, if you will, that you can break out at your tailgate or whatever. Like, hey, did you know that, Ryan Day is going to try to beat his 4th Michigan State coach since he's been here, and he's only been here for, a little more than half a decade?
Yeah.
It's just weird. I don't know. Yeah. All right, let's get to one more question, then we'll get back on track here. A good question here. Thoughts on Will Howard so far? We feeling confident in him with Big Ten play coming up? I would say that you should feel confident in him with Big Ten play coming up because my thoughts on him are we have not seen the best of him, which is saying a lot because you've seen pretty good from him. You've seen leadership qualities. You've seen the passing ability. The thing that I think is impressive is you've seen some intermediate stuff, which I didn't. It's like, I'm sorry, Will Howard, I wasn't familiar with your game. Those are the hardest throws to make. In my opinion, he's made them pretty well. The downfield stuff I think has to be better, but he said he wants to improve as a downfield passer. He wants to show it more. And also the interception was on Jeremiah Smith, according to Will Howard, according to people in the building, and according to Jeremiah Smith himself. So, I think he's been pretty good, and we haven't seen him use his legs at all. So I think you should feel great about him heading into the Big Ten.
Yeah, maybe we haven't seen the best of him. We also haven't seen maybe the worst of him and how he responds to that. So I think we have yet to see him really have to respond to real adversity. Yeah, he threw that pick, but again, that wasn't really it's early in the game against Marshall, but I think it's a different thing on the road in a Big Ten game. We probably won't see that. Maybe we do at Michigan State if it's early in the game and, Michigan State comes out fast and he makes a mistake or two. But I'm curious to see how he responds to that adversity because that's inevitable. That will happen at some point. How does he respond to that? I think so far he's been really strong. A lot of his best throws come off play action, I believe. If you look at it, he's got, I think, 31 of 39. Some ridiculous stat. Let me go here to passing count. Yeah, he is 30 of 39 on play action passes this year with 5 of his touchdowns coming off that concept. So like a lot of what they're doing right now is establishing the run and then passing off of it. So that's helping him out a lot. He's also pretty good at making those reads in the RPOs, which I think he deserves credit for. That's not easy to do. I think he did that a lot at Kansas State. He's doing it more at Ohio State as well. Again, they call him the run game coordinator. So he's also involved in the run game, making those checks as well with Seth McLaughlin. So they're working together. He also has a hand in that, even if he's not running football. So he deserves credit for that. I do think, though, his best passes have come off of the run when you're doing that play fake and you're a little bit there. So I'm curious to see how he does traditionally, just typical drop back passing as we go forward. And again, like I said, how he responds to adversity.
Yeah, the adversity is interesting. I'm just super curious to see what Chip Kelly does with Will Howard. He's got kind of not like a superhero, but like, there's some, I think there's a little bit of hero in Will Howard, whether it be, some play action stuff that they can do that only Will Howard can run in this offense. There's some rushing stuff that only Will Howard should be able to do at his size that I think Chip Kelly is probably, as our buddy Tim May likes to say, champing at the bit to get to, that we haven't seen yet. And I think that's coming. I really do think that's coming. So, I'm not ready to evaluate Will Howard yet. Truly, like you can say like, oh yeah, he's been good, but you can't really evaluate him until we get to these bigger games because he was not brought here to beat Marshall. He was not recruited to Ohio State from the transfer portal to beat Western Michigan 56-0. He was recruited to pilot this team, not literally, he's not going to fly the plane, but to beat Oregon. He was brought here to help them beat Michigan. And like, if you go 10-2 and you lose to Oregon and Michigan, nobody gives a what if you beat Western Michigan. So like, I'm not ready to be there yet. Maybe I'll evaluate him more after the Iowa game, right? Iowa, would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. Although, I mean, that's going to also be a litmus test for this run defense. We talked about this earlier in the week, but like Caleb Johnson and that offensive line right now is probably the scariest thing about Iowa. The defense, too, of course, is stout as always with that veteran group that they seemingly always have right now. So, yeah, that's a fair assessment. And, that is a home game. I think if you get in front of Iowa early, it makes things really hard for that team. If they keep it close early, then I think you maybe get a better gauge of Will Howard in a close game against Iowa. But I do think if you get like a multi-score lead on Iowa early, that offense is really built right now to come from behind. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'm just going to present this without comment down below. Yeah. Look at Andy skipping ahead to Iowa. We don't overlook Michigan State here, Andy. Remember 1998. So I do think like this week, as we roll along here, I do think this week is a decent preview for Caleb Johnson. Not that these two backs are anything compared to Caleb Johnson. I think he's one of the top 10 backs in America.
Caleb Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like Caleb Johnson, Khalil Mullings, the two Ohio State backs, Ashton Jeanty. I would hear an argument for someone else if you got one, but I don't know if you could have one right now. Like those guys are all really good, but
Manungai.
Manungai, there we go. Okay, so yeah, the Big Ten and the Mountain West running back conferences. Yeah, that's wow. How weird is that?
I guess RJ Harvey from UCF has 8 touchdowns already and 448 yards on the ground. So
yeah, that's true. Okay.
There's always a few guys out there that you're like, they're not on your radar. But yeah, the Big Ten's got some good backs, and Caleb Johnson, I think, is at the top of that.
And I think Carter and Lynch Adams are pretty good backs. I don't think that this is like super like, well, if you could do it against these two, you can do it against Caleb Johnson. But I think it is like a good, again, like we've talked about all season so far, it's a good ramp up, right? You go from Akron to Western Michigan to Marshall, those three teams kind of chronologically in order of how good each team is. And we'll see, I guess, because Marshall plays Western Michigan this week. So we finally get once and for all, we find out who the king of the Ohio State non-conference schedule is. But then you get Michigan State, then Iowa, then Oregon. It's like the perfect ramp up to everything. Well, I think the running back situation is the exact same thing. You get Michigan State, then Iowa. And that's this week is going to tell me a lot about where my head should be heading into the Iowa matchup.
Also, shout out New England because Kyron Lynch-Adams came from UMass, and then Nate Carter came from UConn. So that backfield, New England football,
Sure.
at least where they started or they were previously playing college football.
Sure.
Yeah, no, look, Michigan State's got some weapons. We also need to talk about the wide receivers. That their wide receiver depth right now is hit by injury, but you look at probably the prize possession there is Nick Marsh, that freshman who has been spectacular so far for them. He's a game time decision, as Pete Thamel reported today. But again, it goes beyond that with the injuries they've had. Like last week against Boston College, they even played 2 walk-ons at wide receiver. They're kind of led right now by their 5th-year senior, Montori Foster Jr. He's pretty good. So like they have options there, but again, missing Antonio Gates Jr., missing Alante Brown. Like they've had injuries there. They do get back Glover this week, Jerron Glover. So like he's a good piece for them. I haven't been last week against Marshall, I thought the defensive backs didn't play their best games. Like I thought Lathan Ransom played a really good game in the first half, but did get beat for that touchdown right before halftime. I feel like we've yet to see maybe the best from Denzel Burke. We've probably, I think Davison Minoson was decent last week, but I don't know if we've seen his best yet. I don't think we've seen like the Jordan Hancock game. He dropped a pick last week, gave up a 3rd down reception. I'm curious to see if BIA, as they call themselves, like come out this week against Michigan State, especially if Michigan State doesn't have all of its wide receivers, because I feel like we've yet to kind of see the best of it. And that's partly because the quarterbacks haven't been as good. But I would have expected them to play better in the first half against Marshall than they did. That goes across the board for the defense. I think this could be a bounce back week for the secondary.
It better be, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge, right? I think they got to have that. I don't think they were playing their A game. I think I had them at like a B- last week. So
Wonder what 350 had on it. That's a Letterman Lounge message board joke. Go over to the Letterman Lounge message board, become a member today at lettermenrow.com. We got to get to this. Could you imagine Tim May in between these two would be a 2-hour show? Hey, we do a lot of shows with Tim May. We do a 40-minute to an hour show with him every Monday inside the Horseshoe. Make sure you watch that. That is like our full, it's the second longest video we do behind this one, but it is our full Saturday we leave the stadium, Sunday we go home, we rewatch the game, and then Monday we reconvene early Monday morning before the rooster crows and break the entire thing down, what we learned on the rewatch. We call it the Monday after. If you're not watching that, I think you're I think you're losing something as an Ohio State fan there. I think both Tim and Andy bring some real juice to that thing, and on the rewatch, it's a good video. I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but I really enjoy that one. So if you do want more Tim May content, I promise we don't go 2 hours when he's with us.
Yeah, his best metaphors come on those Mondays. So,
oh, absolutely, he gets into the metaphors. I got to cut him off. All right, Andy. What is the one thing that Michigan State can do in this game that would make you like nervous? Is there anything that like one specific thing that it's like, okay, if Michigan State does this, then this game's going to get hairy, because it's a 24-point spread. Ohio State's a 6.5-point first quarter favorite. Ohio State is a 13.5-point halftime favorite. So that kind of tells you where they believe this game will be. But if Michigan State does X, then the game will be a little hairy.
I mean, I'm not going to give one. I'll give 3 because that's 3 in my mind. All right. I'm going to say if Michigan State can heat up Will Howard and get pressure, because, again, we mentioned their ability to sack the quarterback, right, leading the Big Ten sacks right now. If they can get pressure on Will Howard, we really haven't seen a ton of that. And Will Howard right now is 1 of 9 under pressure, but, again, only pressured on 11 dropbacks this season. So we haven't seen a big enough sample size to judge off that, in my opinion. But, again, only 1 completion in those situations. That's not great. Yeah. How does he respond if that's the case, if they do get pressure? And, again, maybe that's an indictment of where the pass blocking's at. But, again, as we mentioned, to counteract my point again, they have a pass rushing ability with this Michigan State team. So that's my number 1. My number 2, can the Spartans run the football effectively, and especially with a quarterback in Aiden Childs? Like maybe they try to make things simple for him and make it a one read and tuck situation. And that results in better gains for them and also fewer turnovers, making things simpler, cutting down possessions, trying to control the clock. If that happens, Ohio State could also find itself in maybe a first half pickle. And then my third thing would be if Michigan State scores a touchdown on special teams, because special teams have been pretty good so far for Ohio State. The first couple games, last game, not very good. You have, Brandon Inniss put the ball on the ground, kind of gets saved with a illegal motion penalty that brought that back. But you also have the kickoff issues. It sounds like Austin Snyder might be the guy to do kickoffs. Jaden Fielding's still kicking field goals. How does that look if they have to kick a field goal? So if there's special teams miscues and Michigan State maybe scores a touchdown or recovers a fumble or something, or blocks a punt, that's the third thing. So those are the three things of like Michigan State's best chance of making this interesting for me.
I think okay, so I got one because I'm disciplined. Okay. Unlike you, and sometimes unlike Tim. I think if Michigan State goes up 7-0, I think things get interesting. And I say that to kind of put the Ohio State defense like, I'm watching you. Like it's been really, really good. But as you pointed out, and then I kind of did a little bit more digging into it, and it is a thing. Like teams have been able to move the ball early in the game against these guys, and I can't figure out why. I don't know if it's just good script or if they're so juiced to play against Ohio State that they got to come out and make a statement. But Akron was up 3-0. Western Michigan missed a field goal to go up 3-0, or was it going to be 7-3? It was going to be 7-3.
Yeah, it was 7-3.
Regardless, whatever you want to say. And then Marshall just drives down the field, 13 plays, 75 yards, and punches it in the end zone. Questionable because there could have been a fumble recovery there, but bad fumble luck for Ohio State there. And then, they score a touchdown. So Michigan State with a juiced up crowd under a first-year head coach looking to pull off an upset. I've seen Michigan State because when you click on one tweet anymore, the algorithm just completely goes to whatever you click on. So I clicked on a Michigan State fan account just to see like what the vibe is. And now like my entire Twitter algorithm is flooded with Michigan State. And there are people in the Michigan State community who believe they're going to win this game. So like if they already have the belief, they take that into the stadium under a first-year head coach, and then they go up 7-0. Are you kidding me? In prime time, I think that is the only way that this game gets interesting. Because if Ohio State jumps on them early, it's lights out. It's over.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to like what I predict. What Michigan State's probably going to try to do is control the clock. Like I think when you're overmatched talent-wise, your best shot is milking the clock with long drives, running the football, using all your weapons there. That kind of three-headed pronged effort with Aiden Childs, Kyron Lynch-Adams, and Nate Carter. You got to ride that and limit number of possessions that Ohio State gets. I mean, we saw that the first game of college football this year with FSU, which we thought at the time was a good team. Georgia Tech just completely suffocated them and gave them, I think, 7 or 8 possessions. Yeah. That's a way to shorten the game and give yourself a shot. If, they can't do that, and if they can't control the clock, Ohio State's going to win by 30, 40, 50 points because the offense is way too explosive. With that many possessions, they're going to score a lot of points.
Hey, there are a bunch of people watching this video. If you haven't liked the video, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, go down and give us a like. It helps us out a lot. Helps the YouTube algorithm. We're trying to produce the best Ohio State content we can. Go down and hit the like button. Help us out a little bit. I agree. I like that too. Any closing thoughts on Ohio State, Michigan State? Because Andy, I'm here to tell you, we tried to save like the last 5 to 10 minutes for the show for just like, hey, college football. What are you thinking about this weekend? Turns out this weekend has some just bangers for games, man. This weekend is loaded. And Ohio State, Michigan State, obviously the headliner. But there's some really strong stuff going on in college football this week. Any closing thoughts on Ohio State, Michigan State before we get to the slate?
I'm just happy the Big Ten's here. I think we're going to get a really good data point here. Not only is it the first Big Ten game, it's the first road game for Ohio State and Will Howard, seeing how they respond. We saw them piping in the crowd noise yesterday at practice. It's a night game in Spartan Stadium. And like you said, that crowd's going to be there. Ohio State fans are going to travel. It's going to be a good atmosphere. I think we're all excited for it under the lights. I do think it's going to be a test regardless. Like, I think Ohio State, they had an attitude shift this week. They weren't happy with the way they played against Marshall. They didn't name a defensive player of the game. They weren't satisfied with the output. We could tell based off the tone of not only Ryan Day, but Jim Knowles in the press conferences, tone of some of the players. They weren't satisfied with that performance. I'm really interested to see how they kind of come out of this game, how they start, because the attitude shift was clear this week.
All right, my closing thought before we jump into the slate. The Lettermen Live crew just went 50 minutes, legitimate 50 minutes, no special teams talk. All right. We got a kicker situation. I'm very anxious to see what happens at kicker. Shane nailed it. Shane, you're our guy. I'm going to put you up on the screen. I want to know what's going on with this kicker, man. So here's the deal. Jaden Fielding tweaked something, didn't let anybody know, and then kicked 3 out of bounds. That's basically the rub. So now Austin Snyder, in comes Austin Snyder, who's probably going to handle kickoffs. Ryan Day last night said Austin would handle kickoffs. Today on the radio show said, we'll see. So who's going to handle extra points and field goals? We don't know. So
he said it would be Jaden, but
if something
happened, right? How can you kick a 40-yard field goal with that tweak? I don't know. I mean, but that's what he said. He said that they're confident right now they can do extra points and field goals, but kickoffs is still up in the air.
Yeah, we'll see. So I'm just, they're trying to make special teams an emphasis. They are working really, really hard on special. They really are working extremely hard on special teams. I know they weren't happy with the effort last week, even though Brandon Ennis almost housed one. But yeah, I'm curious what's going on with the kicker. All right, let's get to it. Again, like I said, headliner, obviously Ohio State, Michigan State on Peacock in primetime. But there's some other games. There's a little contest going on down in Tuscaloosa between number 2 Georgia and number 4 Alabama. Who you got?
I got Georgia. The way they played against Kentucky, getting time off, I don't see them losing to Alabama. I do think we're going to see a rematch of this game, whether that's in the SEC title game or college football playoff. This is probably not the first time. This is probably not the last time these two teams are going to play this year, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Basically, you heard it here first, folks. Andy Backstrom says horns down. He's got Georgia and Alabama meeting again. You're going to be stunned by this. I'm being serious, too. I'm going Alabama. I'm rolling with the Tide. I think Jalen Milroe can be a difference maker. And I'm not crazy about the Georgia passing attack. I think they miss Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, legitimately miss them. I think it's showing up. I like this Alabama team more and more each week. That doesn't mean I think that they're going to win the national title, but I'm going to go Alabama. Maybe Alabama beats them and then Georgia gets revenge in the playoff or whenever they meet again. But I'm going to go with Alabama here, especially in T-Town. All right, let's go with another ranked matchup. Illinois at Penn State. We're getting, quote, whiteout energy, which I think they're 500 in whiteouts. So I don't know if you need whiteout energy. So
yeah. No, I think this game is super fascinating. Illinois has been the surprise team of the Big Ten for me. Nebraska, people knew they were going to be better than they have been in years past. Luke Altmaier, man, 10 touchdowns so far, no interceptions. Definitely the most surprising quarterback performance of the league this year. But you're playing in Beaver Stadium. I just don't see them keeping it going. Maybe it's close in the first half, but I have Penn State in this one.
I've got Penn State winning, Illinois covering. 17.5 is a lot, even at home. I like this Illinois team. I really do. I'll tell you this. I'm really glad Ohio State's not going to Illinois this year. Michigan, have fun with that one.
They've got 3 DBs with 2 or more interceptions already. Xavier Scott, their cornerback, has 3 picks and a forced fumble. Their defense is intriguing. So
well, good. Too bad for those DBs because Michigan's not going to do anything against those DBs. So but they can stop the run, and I think that's what's intriguing to me about this Illinois team is they can stop the run. So maybe it's not Penn State that they upset, in Happy Valley. But when Michigan comes to town and they honor Red Grange in a couple weeks, buddy, watch out. I think the Illini can make that one fun. I got a real sicko one for you before we get to the final ranked matchup. I want your prediction for Oklahoma at Auburn.
Oh my gosh. The quarterback messiness of this whole situation is just ridiculous because you have Oklahoma just benching Jackson Arnold and starting Michael Hawkins Jr. and then Auburn, I guess, going back to Peyton Thorne after already benching him once. A lot of benching in quarterbacks going on I'm going with Oklahoma just because I think Auburn is dumpster fire right now, and Hugh Freeze is going to get fired soon enough. So I'm going with Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm going to go Oklahoma because I refuse to pick Hugh Freeze. I think he sucks. So that's all I need to say. Even if I thought Auburn was going to win, I wouldn't give the pick out here because I don't like Hugh Freeze. That's just my call. And you know who Hugh's call is. That's a joke. All right. Minnesota at Michigan.
Okay.
Did you see Iowa run the ball on Minnesota last week?
It's definitely going to be Michigan, but I'm curious to see how sustainable this is, man. Like, I really think this can work for certain games. I think Sharon Moore knows it can't work for every game. Like, at some point, you're going to have to actually throw the football with Alex Orji or try to deploy some kind of 2-quarterback system. Not that Davis Warren wowed us at all in the games that he played. They got to throw the football a little bit. Minnesota's got a pretty good defense as well. Michigan had those big run plays. Can they do it again? I'm still going Michigan in this game, but I think it's going to be really close.
What's your favorite reception for a touchdown by a Michigan wide receiver this year?
Guessing it hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened.
Yep.
All right. Last one that I've got to pick, and then I'll turn the mic over to you. You quiz me on any game you want. Oklahoma State at Kansas State, two teams that looked terrible last week. I think Kansas State's probably a little more forgiving. They were on the road in Provo, which is one of the hardest places in college football to play. So you kind of forgive that. Also, they turned the ball over like on 5 straight possessions, and BYU scored like 38 points in like 7 minutes. It's just like the craziest thing. The punt return touchdown was awesome. But then Oklahoma State looked awful and benched its quarterback against Utah, which was playing its backup quarterback. And now Oklahoma State, Kansas State meet in the Little Apple. Who you got?
Yeah, what? You got Alan Bowman in 7th year.
He got benched.
What's that?
He got benched last week.
They made the full-time switch?
No, but he got benched in the game.
I'm just saying he's still a starter, I'm pretty sure. But
yeah, we'll see.
I'm going Kansas State mainly just because I picked them to make the college football playoff. But yeah, I don't know. Mike Gundy will pull out a 10-win season every once in a while, but I don't think this is one of them.
Well, it turns out that Sage, Ohio, wants picks on Wisconsin, USC. Real quick, rapid fire.
Yeah, I'm going USC this game. I think they bounce back.
All right, I'll go USC as well. Nebraska, Purdue. I think Nebraska wins this game by a mile. I think Purdue is like Nebraska. I think Purdue is like worst Power 4 team in the country. Bad.
Yeah, Rayola might throw for 400. Nebraska big time.
It's dire. It's getting late early in West Lafayette. Maryland, Indiana. You smoking cigs this weekend?
Like that one. I'm going Indiana. Yeah, keep it rolling. 5-0.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. What else you got? You want some Washington State Boise action? You want some? How are we?
Yeah, Louisville, Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, that one. See, like there's some games on here that I just forgot because it's it's a strong slate.
Yeah, what you're thinking?
Okay, so my thinking is that Louisville's defense is nasty. I like this Louisville defense. And the thing that I don't like is the Notre Dame offense. I think the thing about Riley Leonard is that he had 3 passing touchdowns last year, and that was all chalked up to, well, his ankle was hurt. Well, he went through injuries all year. Well, he doesn't have any pass. I think he has maybe 1 passing touchdown this year. It just doesn't look right. Something's off there. And I don't know how Notre Dame scores points in this game. And I trust Jeff Brom to have something up that sleeve because he's an offensive mastermind. So I'm going to take Louisville on the road. I know that's like a contrarian pick. I know it's weird. I'm going to take Louisville to win that game outright. I
think this is Notre Dame's season. Like, I think they got to win this game. Maybe they could get in with 2 losses maybe, but they got to beat USC for sure. But I mean, like, you already had the loss to Northern Illinois. I think they kind of have to win this game at home.
I do too, because they were going to be able to hang their hat on having Florida State and USC as like signature wins. Well, Florida State is booty, and USC is probably going to beat Notre Dame because Notre Dame can't score points. So, yeah, I think you're right that this could be their season. And also, if you lose your second game in September, like, okay, well, are you going to keep playing the quarterback who already has a torn whatever in his non-throwing arm? Or are you going to start looking with an eye on the future? And so this is a great call because I completely forgot about this game.
Yeah. I think that one could be top 3 arguably for this week of just implications for what it means for Notre Dame and Louisville. Louisville, maybe second best team in the ACC behind Miami right now. I mean, hard to know.
Western Kentucky, Boston College?
I think BC will take care of business.
Okay.
Bill O'Brien, I think he's got them under control. But yeah, here's another game though. I wanted to. Do you think Clemson plays Stanford? Clemson will probably win this game. Do you think the Clemson offense is for real? Like, do you think that this last couple games is more who they are than they were in the opener against Georgia?
So I haven't gotten to watch them since the Georgia game. But, box score warrior. I thought Cade looked like terrified. Cade Klubnik looked terrified against Georgia, like scared, which like was weird to me. Like, this is your, play ball. This is your third year. But it's very apparent that he doesn't look that way now. He looks very comfortable. They look like they're explosive. So, yeah, I mean, unless they're playing Georgia, I think Clemson's offense is for real. So I'm kind of buying back in on Clemson. I think they can beat Miami because I like their defense enough, and I like Miami to kind of stumble at some point.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that with the ACC. Like, Miami, Louisville, Clemson, probably the top 3 there. So
yeah, I would take Clemson in those 3 if I'm being honest. And then I did forget about one that I wanted to throw out there. There's a game going on in Baton Rouge. LSU at night in Death Valley, and I know you always say at night in Death Valley, but remember the Troy game from like 2018, or whatever year that was, 2016, 17. They lost to Troy, and that game was not just like a middle of the day game. So it can happen. South Alabama is going to LSU. South Alabama scored 87 2 weeks ago.
Northwestern State.
Yeah, and then scored like 55 last week. This South Alabama team can score, man. They can score. They just beat the tar out of App in Boone. And the LSU defense sucks. And so I'm very, very curious to see if LSU's defense gets it together. Because if they don't, I just think that could be very interesting.
The South Alabama offense coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Rob Eatsell, he's the guy that did like the Nick Saban impression in the locker room that went viral way back when.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah. You old yet? Yeah.
I do.
So that's fun. And yeah, they score a ton of points.
All right. Last one. Sage, Ohio wants one more pick. Washington, Rutgers.
I'm about Rutgers. I think Rutgers is one of the more for real fringe upper echelon Big Ten teams. Like I'd put them at 6 or 7.
This is the game where Washington finally gets introduced to what it's like to play a weekly Big Ten schedule.
Washington's just got a tough hand this year, man. They lost basically everything. So
they go to Rutgers on Friday night. Next Saturday they host Michigan. So you want to get put in a meat grinder? Go play in Piscataway against Greg Schiano on a Friday night, and then fly back home and have Michigan come to you trying to take your kneecaps out.
You don't think their wake-up call to the Big Ten was 5 points given up against Northwestern?
Yeah.
It's a lot of purple.
We're not in our 30s, Shane. Shame on you. We're not in our 30s yet. We're still 20s guys. For these 220 guys, let's get out of here, though. I got to get to bed. That's Andy Backstrom on the other side of your screen. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to Lettermen Live. Ohio State and Michigan State, Saturday night, 7:30 in Spartan Stadium. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you're not there, go to Peacock, or you can just go to lettermenrow.com and read all about it. Thanks to everyone who watched this video. We're growing like a weed here at Lettermen Live, presented by Wendy's. Now get over to lettermenrow.com. Come hang out with us there.